Business of the day is presentation of report of the Committee on Health Institutions on a bill for an act to establish the Federal Medical Center, Ogoja, Cross River States, and for related matters, standing in the name of Honorable Pascal Obi. Honorable members, recall that the bill was referred to the committee on Thursday, 23rd July 2020. The report is ready for presentation. Honorable Pascal.
I remain Honorable Dr. Pascal Chigozie Obi. I represent the very great people of Idato North, Idato South Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, I'm from Imo State, the Eastern Heartland. Mr. Speaker, I rise to move that the House do receive the report of the Committee on Health Institutions on a bill for an act to establish the Federal Medical Center, Ogoja, Cross River State, and for related matters. Mr. Speaker, I so move.
Thank you. Honorable Mukhtar, please second.
Mr. Speaker,
It's not properly stated, Mr. Speaker.
honorable colleagues, my name is Mukhtar Ahmed, politically known as Morovia. I stand to second the motion ably moved by Honorable Pascal. I shall second.
Those in support, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. Ayes have it. Please lay your report, Honorable Pascal Obi. The third business of the day is presentation of 3 reports of the Committee on Public Petitions, standing in the name of Honorable Jerry Alagbaso. Honorable Alagbaso is invited to present the reports.
Thank you, Performing Speaker, and my colleagues. My name is Jerry Alabosa from Imo State, representing our Lower San East Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker and colleagues, I rise so that the House received the report of the Committee on Public Petitions on petition by Siaka Salami against Nigeria Police Force. I also arise so that the House do receive the report of the Committee on Public Petitions by Kesami Henry Sambu against the management of Nigeria Social Trust Fund, an appeal for recall and restatement. Mr. Speaker, I also arise to move that the House do receive the report of the Committee on Public Petitions by Rabiu Akem Adimola on behalf of dead Mrs. Rabiu Amori Muiwat against the Pension Transitional Arrangements Directorate PDA on non-payment of benefits and entitlements. Mr. Speaker, I so present.
Thank you. Honorable Badru, please second. Honorable Badru.
Speaker, Right Honorable Speaker, my name is Seni Tondolako Badru. I represent Lagos Island 1 Federal Constituency. I'm from Lagos State. I stand to second motion for the laying of the report by the chairman on public petition. I so second.
Thank you. Those in support, please say aye. Those against, say nay. Honorable Jerry, please lay the report. First order of the day is the third reading of a bill for an act to provide for the establishment of Federal University of Environment Technology, Shipenwa, Ogoni, and for related matters, standing in the name of the House Leader, honorable members recall that the House adopted the report of the Committee of the Whole on the bill on Wednesday, 8th October 2021. I therefore call on the Leader of the House to move that the bill be now read the third time. Leader of the House.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Sorry, Right Honorable Speaker. Sorry, my respected honorable colleagues. Alassane Ado Dogwa is my name. Mr. Speaker, I represent the good people of Dogwa Tudunwada Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I am from Kano State. Mr. Speaker, I rise to move that a bill for an act to provide for the establishment of Federal University of Environmental Technology, SIPEMWA, Ogoni, and for related matters, HB 1219, be taken the third time. Mr. Speaker, I so move that the bill be read. Thank you.
Okay, can we get a second, Deputy here? Honorable Fulata, please, can you second?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. I'm Abubakar Fulata. I represent the New Greek Assembly Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, I'm from Jigawa State. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I move to second the motion ably moved by the Leader of the House that a bill for an act to provide for the establishment of Federal University of Environmental Technology, SWEPA, Ogoni, and for related matters to be read the third time. I so second, Mr. Speaker.
Those in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. Ayes have it. The second order of the day is the third reading of a bill for an act to provide for the establishment. Okay, sorry, Clerk, read the long title, please.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, a bill for an act to provide for establishment of Federal University of Environmental Technology, Sakbenwa Ogoni, and for related matters, third reading.
The bill is read the third time and passed. Second order of the day is the third reading of a bill for an act to provide for the establishment of a specialized national dermatology hospital, Garkida Management Board for the hospital, provide dermatological treatment, research and training, and for related matters, standing in the name of the House Leader. Honorable members will recall that the House adopted the report of the Committee of the Whole on the bill on Tuesday, 12th October 2021. I therefore call on the Leader of the House to move that the bill be now read the third time.
Thank you once again, Mr. Speaker. I thank you, honorable members. So may I, before taking the second bill on the order paper, Mr. Speaker, crave your indulgence and the leave of the House to take bill number 2, 3, 4, and 5 concurrently, because they are all meant for third reading. Mr. Speaker, by your leave, I will go ahead.
Either you give it to Atiku or you give it to Clark. Pardon?
Mr. Speaker, I said, before taking the second bill on the order paper as directed, I would like to draw the attention of the House and your humble self that bill number 3, 4, and 5 are of the same legislative nature, and I would like to have your mandate to go ahead and read them concurrently.
Yes, in the interest of time, please go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I rise to move that a bill for an act to provide for establishment of a specialized national dermatology hospital, Garkida Management Board for the hospital, provide dermatological treatment, research and training, and for related matters, HB 1382 be read the third time. Mr. Speaker, I also read on the order paper a bill for an act to establish the National Agricultural Development Fund to provide funds for agricultural development and for related matters, HB 1319, be read the third time. Mr. Speaker, a bill for an act to provide special financial support, training, and modern security equipment for the revamping of the Nigerian Armed Forces and for related matters, HB 742, be read the third time. Last bill, Mr. Speaker, honorable members, is for a bill for an act to establish Chartered Institute of Forensic and Certified Fraud Examiners of Nigeria to provide for the regulation and control of its membership and promote the practice of forensics and fraud examiners in Nigeria and for related matters, HB 1220, be read the third time. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I so move.
All right, can we get somebody to second that all the bills be read a third time? Any, as enumerated by the leader of the Honorable Elumelu, Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, my colleagues. I remain Honorable Ndudi Godwin Elumelu, and I represent the good people of Anocho Military Constituency. I'm from Delta State. I rise to second the motion that we do read for the third time bills number 2, 3, 4, and 5. I so second.
Thank you. Those in support that we read those bills a third time, please say aye. Those against it, say nay. Ayes have it. Clerk, please read the long title of the 4 bills.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, a bill for an act to provide for establishment of a specialized national dermatology hospital, Garkida, management board for the hospital, provides dermatological treatment, research and training, and for related matters, third reading. A bill for an act to establish the National Agricultural Development Fund to provide funds for agricultural development and for related matters, third reading. A bill for an act to provide special financial support, training, and modern security equipment for the revamping of the Nigerian Armed Forces and for related matters, third reading. A bill for an act to establish Chartered Institute of Forensics and Certified Fraud Examiners of Nigeria to provide for the regulation and control of its membership and promote the practice of forensics and fraud examiners in Nigeria and for related matters, third reading.
All the bills are read the third time and passed. Sixth order of the day is commencement of debate on the general principles of a bill for an act to authorize the issue from the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation the total sum of 16,391,023,917,692 naira only, of which 768,276,616,043 naira only is for statutory transfers. 3,901,952,981,559 naira only is for debt service. 6,829,015,483,446 naira only is for recurrent non-debt expenditure, while the sum of 4,891,778,836,654 naira only is for contribution to the Development Fund for capital expenditure for the year ending 31 December 2022. Standing in the name of the House Leader, honorable members will recall that the bill was read the first time on Thursday, 7th October 2021. Today is the first allotted day. I now invite the leader to move that the bill be now read a second time.
Thank you. Right, Honorable Speaker. Honorable members, Once again, Ado Dogwa is my name. Mr. Speaker, I represent Dogwa Tudunwada Federal Constituency. I am from Kano State. Mr. Speaker, I rise to move that a bill for an act to authorize the issue of the consolidated revenue fund of the Federation, the total sum of 16,391,23,970,690 naira only, of which 768,276,616,043 naira only is for statutory transfers. 3,901,952,981,550 naira only is for debt service. Honorable members, Mr. Speaker, honorable members, 6,829,015,483,446 naira only is for recurrent non-debt expenditure, whereas the sum of 4,891,778,836,654 naira only is for contribution to the development fund for capital expenditure for the year ending 31st December 2022. HB 1632 be read a second time. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I so move.
Minority Leader, can you use second, please?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I remain Honorable Dodi Godwin Elmelu, and I represent the good people of Anochosh Federal Constituency. I'm from Delta State. I rise to second the motion moved by the House Leader. I so second.
Those in support, please say aye.
Step aside, please.
Those against, please say nay. Ayes have it. Honorable colleagues, like we stated yesterday, I have a list here for today and for tomorrow. So we'll go through the list for those who are interested in contributing to the debate. Honorable Yusuf Tajuddin, I'm not sure he's here. Honorable Abejide Leke. Yeah, go ahead. Or rather, actually, I think let's start with the House Leader to put some flesh on the, so we'll be guided on the, you want to lead the debate. In other words, the House Leader. House Leader, lead the debate. Yeah. All you did was to move just lead the debate. If you are, otherwise we can go on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, my respected colleagues, members of this important House. Mr. Speaker, I would like to first of all formally convey to this honorable House and to all our members in this very hallowed chamber the appreciation of the executive arm of government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, led by Muhammadu Buhari, for the very warm reception and very good engagement they have had when the President came to lay the budget on Thursday, the 7th day of this month. Mr. Speaker, I have received a lot of calls and communications, formal and informal, that the President is particularly happy in the manner in which you received him and the manner he has exercised that constitutional responsibility. Mr. Speaker, I would like to also thank members on behalf of the leadership for their cooperation to the leadership of the House of Representatives right from day one till date. And I therefore move to say that this is a budget that Mr. President has laid before this honorable House, not only to comply with the constitutional requirement that he has to come and lay the budget estimate before the House of Representatives and the National Assembly by extension, but simply because it was an exercise that really portrayed the very good working relationship between the executive arm of government and the legislature of this important Ninth Assembly. The budget, as highlighted by Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, I want to believe the figure may have sounded quite very extraordinary, 16.449 trillion. I believe this was the highest figure we have ever had in the course of our engagement on a money bill. But I want to believe honorable members will accept the fact that yes, with the changing economic situation and with the rising economic challenges and demands by our people, and in order for us to address the infrastructural deficit in the country, to also be able to engage some of these new issues, health issues, the COVID-19 pandemic, and so many other things, the need for the government to really invest heavily in the
Honorable Ihembe, please.
The need for the government to invest very heavily in the infrastructural facilities of this country became
Honorable
very
Engineer
apparent.
Satomi, take your seat.
Mr. Speaker, it is also obvious
Disband the Bornu
that
caucus there.
Nigeria, as everybody knows, would like also to fight most of these issues, health issues, especially the COVID-19 issue. We need a lot of money to really service our health facilities, to provide for effective health care delivery for our people. Education is also another very important sector to which Mr. President is so much committed to. The issue of agriculture, which is one of the major and key cardinal principles of this administration, Mr. Speaker, has also taken chunks of these resources to be invested in the 2022 Appropriation Bill. As usual, Mr. Speaker, I would like to urge my honorable members, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, men of timber and caliber, our respected members of the House of Representatives, who do reserve the single right, only right, to pass this budget. But because what we have on the floor of the House is just a recommendation, what do you call it? It's an estimate. And this can no longer be a bill, can no longer be implementable until and unless the joint National Assembly, the joint House and Senate agree to it and accept to pass it into law, and thereby becoming a law for definite implementation by the executive arm of government. May I therefore, on behalf of the government and on behalf of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, plead with members of this honorable House to look at these submissions, this estimate, with due consideration, of course, under the overriding interest of the Nigerian people. Consider this presentation and also be able to pass it within a good time so that we can also continue to sustain the budget cycle that we have unprecedentedly created for Nigeria and is working well for our businesses and our economy, so that budget can as well can commence working from January to December. This is one unprecedented achievement that we have made through the leadership of Right Honorable Speaker Femi Bajabiamila and his counterpart in the Senate by your general cooperation. And I feel if we continue in this manner, our people will stand to gain more than what they used to lose in the past. I want to urge you once again to please look at these submissions and look at this estimate in the overall interest of Nigeria and allow Mr. President to go ahead and implement the possibly passed budget at least within the shortest possible time. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I thank you for the opportunity, and I hope members will exactly play ball so that at the end we will have a budget that can be implemented. When it gets to the committee, like we have always said, the committee system has been the live wire of our legislative operations. So committees are expected at the end, when this budget is dedicated to the committees for engagement, are expected to really work on the basis of the oversight they have conducted to make sure that what we had in 2021 was implemented to the latter. And I want to believe members can also accept the fact that yes, the implementation of 2021 was quite appreciable. It was quite significant because we had between the range of 70 to in some cases, 90% releases, 100% releases, sorry. And by that performance, I want to believe members should have every reason to consider this bill and pass it for implementation. Thank you, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Thank you, Honorable Leki Abejide. Let's restrict our contributions straight to the merits. 2 minutes, please, because there are so many members who want to
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
contribute.
Honorable colleagues, my name is Honorable Leke Abejide. I represent the good people of Yagba Federal Constituency. I'm from Kogi State. Mr. Speaker, let me first commend the Mr. President for making capital projects a priority for both 2021 budget and the proposed 2022 budget. Being as it is today, on a reliable source, some of the projects have been funded 100%. That is why I have little concern about the issue of borrowing. Once the capital projects are executed, it will lead to economic growth and subsequently economic development. So that's why I have little concern about the borrowing. Once it's channeled through this capital project, we are going to achieve results. Where I have a little worry, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, is about the assumptions of the key parameters of the budget. Not all the assumptions, but majorly the issue of crude oil production per day, which was put at 1.8 million per day. During our MTF hearing, when we had the meeting and the GMD appeared before us in the House Committee on Finance, he said the average production ranged between 1.6 to 1.7 million per day. So in projection, it is always good to be realistic. So if you take the average of 1.7 per day, I think it's more realistic than going higher, because when there is a shock, it will be difficult for us to remedy it. It's always good not to be too ambitious. I'm talking about the production per day. These are the areas I think we should look at. I think it's over-ambitious to put it at 1.8. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, honorable colleagues, the benchmark of $57 per barrel, if you look at the world market today, is above $80. So I think this is a bit low. If we can look at it, not to be too ambitious also, maybe we take it above $60 per barrel. I think this is a bit realistic, because if you look at the trend for the past 2 years, it has never come down below this price. So I think the price of $57 per barrel is very low. Aside these two areas, Right Honorable Speaker, honorable colleagues, I think the budget is one of the best budgets ever presented by this president. And you can see, even from the presentation and the little we have read online, I believe it deserves our applause. Another area of concern that I will say, and I know the public may not take it lightly, but that is the truth. If you look at the exchange rate, in 2021, it was 379. And the budget of the National Assembly was almost the same thing this year, that the exchange rate is 410. That is to tell you that what I will do with my ZIP last year, I will not be able to do it next year. So there's need for this to be looked at, especially the area of our ZIP, so that, because that's the only thing we have to perform in our various constituencies. If these other areas are being looked to, I think the budget is good to go. And I will also crave the indulgence of honorable colleagues to support the budget so that it can be passed in good time. Thank you, Honorable Speaker and honorable colleague. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Leke. on your observations. Honorable MT Mongunu.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, my name is Mohamed Tahir Monguno. I represent Marte Monguno, Ganze Federal Constituency of Borno State. Mr. Speaker, first and foremost, I want to commend the executive arm of government for the robust implementation of the budget, to the extent that some components of the budget are today funded 100%, while the least funded is about 70–80%. This is highly commendable, having regard to our history of budget implementation in this country. So for this singular effort, the executive arm of government deserves a pat on the back. Mr. Speaker, foreign members, this budget, I will dare say, is a budget that is meant for the vast majority of Nigerians. That is the proletariat, having regard to the various components of the budget. One, this is a budget that is responsible and responsive to the yearnings and concerns of gender and the vulnerable group in our society. For the first time, we have a budget that takes care of the problems of the vulnerable group in our society. And this is in line with the desire of government of lifting at least 100 million people out of poverty. And then the budget seeks to diversify the economy with robust deployment of resources to MSMEs. All of us here know that MSMEs are the bedrock of economic development of any society. So this aspect of deploying significant resources for the deployment of this sector will go a long way in diversifying our economy. And then robust resources also deployed to the issue of defense and internal security. And this is against the backdrop of the fact that the primacy of governance is to guarantee the life and security of its citizens. And any government that fails or neglects to do that primary function has lost its mandate to the people. And against this backdrop, a lot of resources is deployed to the issue of defense and internal security to take care of the primary responsibility of governance. Then deployment of resources to our critical infrastructure like roads, railways, also has the effect of generating multiplier effects in the economy by creating employment and what have you. Well, my area of concern with regard to the budget, as alluded to Mr. Honorable Agbijide, is the issue of the benchmark of oil, which is at peaks at $57. There is a need for the National Assembly to tinker with this benchmark price, especially against the background of the fact that the price of oil in the international market is now around $83 per barrel. So there is a need for the National Assembly to tinker with that price to bring it in tandem with the realities that we have now in the international market. Then I will also commend our various committees to embark upon very robust oversight to make sure that dividends of democracy is delivered to the doorsteps of the people in consonance is what is contained in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Whip. Honorable Luke Akpan of North York.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Onofiog Luke, by the amazing grace of God, I represent the people of Etinan, Nsurubium Federal Constituency of Akwa Ibom State. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for the opportunity you've afforded me to air some of the observations and commend Mr. President and then the federal government for the plausible recommendations or proposals in the budget, and equally try to raise some concerns that are being widely shared, not only by the members in these hallowed chambers, but by Nigerians, which we represent in these hallowed chambers. Mr. Speaker, let me use the opportunity to commend our colleagues in this House. Let's behave like the proverbial Agama lizard, who says that when he falls from an Iroko tree, if he does not have anyone to commend him for a job well done, he will tell himself he's done well. Let me commend this House under your leadership and our colleagues for timelessly reinstating the January-December budget cycle and sustaining it from 2019 to today. It's something commendable, and by extension, the chairman of the National Assembly, that's the Senate President, and the National Assembly as a whole, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I commend our colleagues for timelessly too, working assiduously to make sure that the budget is always ready for us to go on that cycle. Mr. Speaker, following from the above, there are plausible recommendations by the federal government in the 2022 proposals, which my concern has asked me to share, and then appreciate, and then look at it, and then commend it. One of them, Mr. Speaker, is the provision of about 50 billion for hazard allowance for medical personnel, Mr. Speaker. The Speaker will recall that as part of the issues that led the medical personnel to go on strike is the hazard allowance, which were not paid. And then even as of now, those hazard allowances are quite very minimal, Mr. Speaker. We commend this effort of the federal government to capture this. I believe that this will stem the tide for industrial action in the health sector in 2022. This is quite commendable. Mr. Speaker, again, it's commendable in the sense that we are still fighting COVID-19. We know that the federal government had paid for about 3 months COVID-19 allowance, and for 3 months, and after then those allowances have not been paid. We know what our medical personnel are exposed to daily, even while fighting COVID, even while doing surgery, even while attending to lesser fever. So there is need for them to be paid these allowances so that it can be a morale booster, Mr. Speaker. We have had a whole lot of brain drain in the last few years because our eggheads have been pushed to go into other climes because of the challenges we have here. So while we are commending Mr. President for this, there is need for us to up that hazard allowance from 5,000 naira, which has been for over 20 years, to something that will boost the morale of those medical personnel. So this is commendable, but we can equally look at how we can increase the hazard allowance for medical personnel, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, another provision in the budget that is commendable is the statutory transfer to the National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure. The world is going technology, and then we need to be in pace with how the world is moving. And I want to commend Mr. President and commend the Federal Executive Council for looking at this perspective to try to have a statutory transfer for the National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, the investment in defense against the backdrop of the security that we are facing today is quite commendable. But what we will urge is that let there be a judicial use of these finances. Mr. Speaker, we see in reportage every day, and it bothers me, about our security personnel being hacked down by bandits in numbers, soldiers. The question is, what have we done to take care of their families? What have we done to boost their morals? I believe that the much funding that we are having for defense and security in 2022 proposed budget will take care of these issues. Mr. Speaker, before now, we have been crying for increased and improved welfare for judicial officers. And we have asked the federal government to try to see how they can increase a statutory transfer to the National Judicial Council so that our judges can be taken care of, our judicial officers can be taken care of, our courts can be equipped, and then we can make provision for technology in our court so that we can be at par with other, best practices, or we can adopt best practices and be at par with developed democracies that we see. So the increase of statutory transfer by 10 billion to the National Judicial Council to take up the judiciary is quite commendable, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, even with these lofty plans, programs, and projections of 2022 proposals, Mr. Speaker, there are some concerns, not only by members, concerns not only by our constituents, concerns by entire Nigerians, concerns by experts, concerns by even businessmen, every sector in the country. Mr. Speaker, the very first concern is the sum of 3.9 trillion for debt servicing, which represents almost 25% of the total budget. Mr. Speaker, this is worrisome. This raises some issues or some concern. I believe that federal government will be able to look at it and think out with it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, another source of concern is that the proposal before us has a deficit of 6.2 trillion, and government is proposing new borrowings to finance this deficit. Mr. Speaker, what this implies is that the total public debt of Nigeria is expected to rise to 5 trillion in 2022 fiscal year. Mr. Speaker, this is worrisome, not only for today, it's worrisome for generation yet unborn, it's worrisome for the future of Nigeria. So let us do whatsoever we can to try to see how we can reduce the deficit and how we can reduce borrowing. Mr. Speaker, now to the next point on the issue of borrowing. There is nothing wrong with borrowing, provided we borrow and then put it for production, not for consumption. So as we begin to look at it, let us take the future generations of Nigerians into consideration while we get to borrow, and make sure that the borrowing that we do are being put into productive ventures, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, while we put the money borrowed into infrastructure, three clear things comes to mind. We've looked at the security. Mr. Speaker, power, we need to invest in power. Let us borrow to invest in power. Let us borrow to invest in road. Mr. Speaker, we are looking at the general principles of the appropriation bill. But permit me to say that not only do we have these road challenges in one part of the country, it exists in the entirety of the country. Let me use, for instance, Mr. Speaker, the Calabar-Itu road that goes to Dukpani and gets to Ikorekpene. Mr. Speaker, that area is being cut off. People spend 8 hours on the road, and we have seen something less than a billion naira, a billion naira allotted to that road in the different lots that have been given. That is quite inadequate, Mr. Speaker. We have to invest in our roads. We have to invest in our public transportation. Mr. Speaker, another challenge that we have in the budget is the issue of debt borrowing. Debt.
Honorable Luke, your 2 minutes is over.
Debt GDP. Thank you very much, sir. Debt GDP parameters, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that is a wrong parameter for borrowing. Mr. Speaker, GDP does not pay debt. Yes, agreed that we have a robust GDP, but GDP does not pay debt. What pays debt is revenue. So we should have a parameter of revenue debt parameter for borrowing. That should be a benchmark, not GDP debt, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
Toby, please,
we have heard
please.
about recoveries
Please
of
allow the
loots.
speaker, please.
Mr. Speaker, we have heard about recovery of
Please,
loots.
Honorable Toby, please.
Mr. Speaker, I hope I have your protection. We have heard about recovery of loot.
You don't have his protection. Your time
Mr.
is
Speaker,
over.
the chief, we should know that when I was commending the president, he was not interrupting me. So I must balance the thing, sir.
No, I think what the chief whip is saying is that everybody has 2 minutes.
Yes,
and
sir.
if one person takes, we won't leave here today. I think that's
Mr. Speaker,
we have to limit ourselves to time.
Going by Leke's presentation, I am just 1 minute away, sir. Thank you very much, sir. So, Mr. Speaker, we have heard about recoveries of loot and misappropriated funds. Mr. Speaker, if we apply these, it can help in reducing our deficit and our borrowing. I don't know whether these loot are still in the stomach of snakes, whether they are still in the stomach of rats, whether they are still in the stomach of animals waiting. But, Mr. Speaker, if we apply this loot, it would be to the betterment of the country. Mr. Speaker, finally,
The pegging of oil price at $57 per barrel is totally quite very low, Mr. Speaker. It's not sustainable. Mr. Speaker, permit me to ask and to give you statistics. Mr. Speaker, in the last 3 years, starting from 2018, we have had a year high at an average of about $60 per barrel. So, Mr. Speaker, we'll be advocating that there should be the upping of the pegging of $57 per barrel to about $60 per barrel. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, the year high was $77.41 per barrel. 2019, Mr. Speaker, it was $66, that is the year high, 24 cents per barrel. In 2020, Mr. Speaker, the year high was $63.27 per barrel. Mr. Speaker, as of today, the Brent is $83.37. Mr. Speaker, Bonnie Bright is $82.30. OPEC basket, where we belong to, is $82.63. So we can have an average of $60 per barrel, and that would be sustainable for us. Mr. Speaker, having said this, Mr. Speaker, the challenge why we have to up that pegging is that the issue of managing excess from the recovered from the sales of crude has always come
Honorable Luke,
accountability
Honorable
and
Luke,
probity. So
Honorable
finally,
Luke,
Mr.
please
Speaker,
be guided.
Finally, Mr. Speaker, the target of 13% inflation is not feasible, Mr. Speaker. But why we might give that, what is achievable, Mr. Speaker, is that we should try to have a mechanism that would address the rising cost of food, the rising cost of cooking gas, and electricity bill. In this case, there should be provision for meters, and we should have to make sure that we cater for Nigeria in this regard.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Speaker, honorable colleagues, I will join my colleagues to ask that this bill be read the second time, having taken into consideration the commendations given and the challenges and the concerns raised. Those are my humble submissions. Thank you for the protection, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Luke. Honorable colleagues, I have about 35 members who intend to speak today on the budget. Let's be mindful, it's even in our rules, let's be mindful of our 2-minute restriction so that we can go through. I'm sure there are so many issues we want to talk about in the budget. Let's pick out the salient ones that we feel are salient and address them. And if anybody has addressed an issue sufficiently, for instance, the benchmark, now this is 2-3 people who have talked about the benchmark now. We may not need to go there just to save time. So, Chief Whip, you'll be keeping time, 2 minutes. And you alert us so the person can round up. No, it will be enforced. Once the Chief Whip gives, you can give a signal, you can warn first time, and then after about 15 seconds, the second warning, and then we turn off the mic. Honorable Jega.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, my honorable colleagues. I'm Mohamed Umar Jega, representing Aleru Gondo, Jega Federal Constituency. Honorable Speaker, we must commend Mr. President for concentrating and tidying this budget as budget for economic growth and sustainability. The budget has also considered
Honorable Lado, approach it, Chief Whip.
diversification of our economy to rely on non-oil elements of the budget so that the economy can grow and stabilize. It further gives impetus on the investment in critical infrastructure, railway, roads, health institutions, agri, and other important sector of the economy. To also strengthen the security and ensure good governance and reduce poverty.
our concern is mostly on the how do we reduce the deficit. So we're advising our colleagues, the House Committee on Finance, to engage the revenue generation agencies to be more effective and to account for every revenue collected, so that we may be able to reduce the deficit. Also, with serious effects of the COVID-19, combined with the effects of insurgency, banditry, and serious displacement, for over 3 million people across the country are displaced. There is more for humanitarian intervention, so that people can be engaged, can reduce poverty, can provide humanitarian interventions to those displaced, so that their life will be better, they can be integrated back into the community. If this is done, the majority of the people will have something doing, and this will no doubt assist and help in the welfare and well-being of the Nigerians. With these few submissions, I will call my colleagues to support the second reading, to approve the second reading of this bill as a submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Jaga. Honorable Sergios.
My highly esteemed colleagues, I'm Sergius Ose Ogun. I represent Eastern Northeast, Eastern Southeast, and I'm from Edo State. Mr. Speaker, I want to commend maybe you and the Chairman Finance for this budget implementation report. I did thank this administration in 2019, when for the first time I saw this. This is the law of the land, that requires that Section 3050 of the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007, that this report should be prepared quarterly, and the Joint Committee of Finance, Senate, House should have copies. Nigerians should have copies. So, but the only time we see this is during budget defense. What I have here now is 2020 fourth quarter. So, that was first quarter in 2020, that was second quarter, that was third quarter. Now, even the 2021, what we have here is second quarter. Mr. Speaker, the point I'm trying to make here is nobody is satisfied about the budget implementation in this country. But if we can get this quarterly, and do something like budget defense, the way we do budget defense, every quarter, even if it's not the whole House, that will review this with the MDAs. If it's the Joint Committee on Finance and maybe PAC, Public Accounts Committee, we should review this with the MDAs. That's the idea.
Mr. Speaker.
The key performance indicators should be clearly highlighted. When the key performance indicators are highlighted,
Honorable Sergius, 1 second. Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I just would like to draw your attention and the attention of the honorable member on the floor that when you are speaking to a matter on the floor of the House, you must observe the relevance of your discussions to that particular subject matter. He's being dilated. He's discussing other matters, financial regulations, whatever, which is not part of the general principles we are supposed to discuss under this body bill. Mr. Speaker, the Speaker should be guided to concentrate only on the subject of the general principles of the budget 2022 as laid by Mr. President. I so observe.
So your point of order is on relevance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's not relevant. Mr. Speaker, you say it's relevant. It's not relevant. We are debating the budget, and we are talking about the implementation, how it can be implemented. Part of what I wanted to say, Honorable Luke already said them. But can anybody sit down here and tell me that we are happy the way budgets are being implemented? This is the law. And I am talking about this is how to follow the law. So how can leader of the House say that is irrelevant? Maybe he's not listening. So, Mr. Speaker, the point I am making...
The point of order raised by the House Leader on relevance is in our rules. So we have to restrict ourselves to the subject matter. So that point of order is sustained. Go ahead.
So thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the point I am making, if we review the budget performance quarterly, so we might be able to get the MDAs to respond more. That's the point I am making. When they respond more, the budget will be implemented in line with our expectations. We have done the January to December now. Can we really say we have seen changes? There are projects right now, leaving the capital. On Monday, I was in one ministry. Two of my other colleagues from this chamber met me there. The
You do realize that what you're doing is that you are indicting the committees. Because the question of reviewing the budget quarterly does not even arise. The budget is meant to be reviewed every week, every month by oversight of the committees. So it is the committees that you are indicting for not doing their work.
But Mr. Speaker, I'm speaking in line with the Fiscal Responsibility Act that says budget implementation report should be presented quarterly. And I said that in my introduction. Maybe the Joint Committee of Finance and maybe PAC can review it. So in so doing, we put the feet of the MDAs to fire. When they have done well, we'll compliment them to carry it over. When they haven't done well, we'll also expose it.
I believe we normally have this amongst the clauses in the budget when it's passed. Yeah, I believe it's one of the clauses in terms of the quarterly report to the National Assembly. But yeah, point is taken.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thanks, Honorable Sejus. Committee members, please take note of Honorable Sejus' point in terms of oversight. Is Honorable Sada Soli here? Honorable Sada Soli is not here.
Honorable Sajos.
Honorable Sada Soli is not here. Honorable Toby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable colleagues, my name is Toby Okechukwu. I represent Aneri of River Federal Constituency from Enugu State. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, this budget of economic growth and sustainability as presented by Mr. President has been, we've taken note. First and foremost, it is appropriate to say that in 2020, there was complete implementation of the budget. In 2021, our expectation is that same shall be true. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, we in 2014 had a budget of about 4.8 trillion. In 2022, we have a proposed bill of 16.3 trillion. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, if we do the mathematics as per the exchange rate of the Naira, those same money, in spite of the quantum of 16.63 trillion, as against 4.8 trillion, they all get down to $40 billion. Presupposing that the quantum leap in terms of the figure we have in the Naira, 4.8 as against 16.3 trillion, amounts to the same thing. It's all motion, no movement. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, it is very, very instructive that the subsidy regime, which is being baptized as under recovery, is hurting the economy big time. We really need to deal with it. It is a matter of living in denial to continue to subsidize petroleum products.
2 minutes is off.
Can I drop my point, sir? I'm opposition leader. So please, Mr. Whip, please, I think we should conduct some in a clement atmosphere. So, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, this House, in responding to need to address issues regarding infrastructure, passed the FRA bill, passed the road fund bill. It is noteworthy that in spirit, the executive is in alliance with that by the concessions they have given to MTN, they have given to Dangote. But there has to be a legislative framework for implementation. Those bills will, to a great extent, help the budget, the capital commitments we have to make in the budget. It is also noteworthy, Mr. Speaker, that we have 3.6 trillion for debt servicing. We also have about more than 6 trillion for the current expenditure. What does that mean? It means that the combined effect is 10 trillion. Whatever is going to capital expenditure, if you take TED Fund and other these agencies away, is about 2.8 trillion. Mr. Speaker, there is no way we can continue to commit that level of fund to the current expenditure and to debt servicing, and we shall overcome our condition. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, Mr. Whip, you know, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues.
Deputy Minority Leader, your time is off. Your time is off, Deputy. You have already spent 4 minutes.
I want to appreciate the work done by the Finance Committee, and that was acknowledged by Mr. President. He said that we should help the executive in cost to expenditure ratio. What does that mean?
Leader, lead by example, please. 2 minutes. Please lead by example, Minority Leader.
The cost to expenditure ratio. What does it mean? The agencies make a lot of money. They return very little to consolidation, the consolidated federation account.
Chairman Business, please approach.
So, what does that mean? What Mr. President said is that this House is called to duty. That we should further, in response to what the agencies generate, also look back and see what they contribute to the federation account. So I think we should take proper notice and make sure that that is done. Then, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues.
Leader, take your seat. He has taken off your mic. Sit down, please. You want to speak like the leader?
What's going on?
You are not the Minority Leader.
Leader, take another minute.
You are not the Minority Leader. Minority Leader is around.
Yeah, go ahead, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your protection from the whip that is doing his job outside jurisdiction. In any case,
time up.
In any case, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, we are called to duty. We should work in concert with the ministries and agencies to make sure the aspiration we so desire is fulfilled. So members of parliament, in concert with the executive, should be able to do the needful so that we can retool ourselves and make sure that our country and our citizens overcome the perils we are going through now.
Yeah. You made some very good points, but let me ask you, in comparison to past budgets, how would you rate the budget performance and implementation? Your candid opinion. By comparison, I said.
Okay, do I have guarantee that I will not be interrupted?
Well, unless you tell a lie.
Mr. Speaker, if you check the preamble of my statement, I acknowledged the performance of the budget in terms of funding.
Okay.
It is also prudent to accept that 40 billion, which is 4.8 trillion in 2014, is still $40 billion,
Yeah.
which
You've
is
answered my question.
16.8 trillion.
You've answered
All
my
motion,
question.
no movement.
You've answered my question. So that means if that is all motion, no movement, and you're acknowledging 100% performance, that means before there was even no motion, let alone movement. That's what it means. Honorable Elumelu. Honorable Elumelu, you can tell that some members on the other side are ready to pounce on. They're waiting, they're ready. So go ahead.
My name is Honorable Godwin Elumelu, and I represent the good people of Anyocho Shimilifera constituency. I'm from Delta State. Mr. Speaker, on a more serious note, let me thank this House for living up to the expectation of Nigerian people. And what is that? Given the shortest time that an estimate for 2022 was brought before us, this House has lived up to its expectation or expectation of Nigerians by committing it for us to debate the general principles. And what that presupposes is that we are ready to help Nigerian people to move forward. So that is commendable. I will not go into criticizing or saying anything ordinary, other than to charge our committees. Mr. Speaker, if you recall, on this floor, we passed a resolution urging our standing committees to be up and doing by going to find out which projects that have not been implemented or that have not been kickstarted, to enable us know what to do in the estimates that had been presented to us. So I expect that the standing committee should live up to expectation by expediting action to see that that assignment is concluded, and that will inform what we are going to do in terms of the budget going forward. My worry is about the loan. But like somebody had submitted, even though you said we should not repeat it, the person said that there's nothing wrong about loan. But that when loan is taken, it should be for a good purpose. Although the person spoke about issue of power, but let me say that power has been privatized. The only aspect that is not privatized is the transmission. So we should now look at how to strengthen this transmission sector of the economy so that when power is generated, that transmission should be able to evacuate it for the betterment of our people so that there can be stable electricity. Now, pandemic has come and is still with us. I expect that this budget that has been presented before us should be able to address those abnormalities that before us when it came calling. And that is by ensuring that all our hospitals, medical centers, that they are up to date with the infrastructural technology that is required by our people to ensure that whenever they go to any hospital, that they will be well treated. Then, of course, on the issue of implementation, On the issue of the implementation of budget, Mr. Speaker, I want to totally say that the onus is on the committees, which I had earlier submitted. The onus is on them to come back, because there are complaints. There are complaints, genuine complaints, that some agencies are refusing to implement the budget, even though they have received up to 60 to 70% funding. And I see no reason why this House or National Assembly should patronize such agency if in the event or out of our finding we find out that truly, up to now that is October, and we have 2022 estimate budget to attend to, and they have not even done anything to it, I submit that this National Assembly should not for any reason give 1 naira to such agency. We should move that money to other agencies that can be used for the betterment of our people. We have other areas, like somebody submitted, that we have resolutions that will have passed in both chambers. Universities, polytechnics, colleges of education had been signed to be into force and no funding for them. Such agencies that have failed to implement the budget, let their funds be moved to these fresh universities and polytechnics so that we can fund them, and by so doing, we will give life to our youth who are interested in going to school but they have no choice within their domain. These are the issues that I think that we should address in the budget of 2020.
Very good submissions. Thank you, Minority Leader. Thank you very much. Honorable Isiaka is not here. Bayo Balogun is not here. Kabir Tukura, not here. Kabir, okay, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Distinguished colleagues, I remain Kabir Ibrahim Tukura, representing Zuru, Fakai, Donkosago, and Sakama Federal Constituency of Kebbi State. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I would like to commend our committees on finance and appropriation for the tremendous work they've been doing since the beginning of the 9th Assembly, and of course the leadership of the 9th Assembly to ensure the budget cycle returns to a January to December 1. Without the proper guidance and dedication of the leadership and entire membership of the 9th House, it would not have been possible. Mr. Speaker, I will go straight to the point, and my key observations in this budget are in terms of infrastructure and works. Mr. Speaker, the budget of the Ministry of Works is rigged with anomalies. It is in the Ministry of Works you would see rehabilitation of, say, National Assembly Road, and then you will see another one, construction of National Assembly Road. The rehabilitation will cost about 40% of the sums for the construction. Mr. Speaker, are we fooling ourselves? Why do you have to budget something for rehabilitation when there's something for reconstruction of the same road? Why don't you channel that funds for rehabilitation into the reconstruction, Mr. Speaker, another very disturbing trend in the ministry is with FEMA. Till date, the bureaucracy in procurement process in FEMA has made it such that they've not started their works. We're in October. The budget is almost ending, and yet there's no procurement in FEMA. Something needs to be done about that. There are some roads that lead to my constituency which are very vital in the Northwest, which if constructed well, if constructed and in use, will cut travel time from certain regions, maybe from Kano to Lagos, by about 4 or 5 hours. Mr. Speaker, you will see there's Leoji Gulbin-Boka Bridge along Kontagora-Zuru Road. 2 bridges. Total contract sum is about 3 billion. but allotted 300 million. What are we going to achieve with 300 million in construction of 2 bridges? What about 3 billion naira? Also, there is emergency rehabilitation of Gada Zema Zuru Gamji Road. Mr. Speaker, that road is awarded at about 9 billion.
Honorable Kabir, your time is off.
Let me round up, my leader. Awarded at about 9 billion, but only 400 million was allotted to that road. Rather than giving these paltry monies, let's concentrate the monies and do something tangible. That road is very vital, Your Excellency. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
What's your point of order? Honorable Kabir. Okay, it has been overtaken, eh? Okay. Honorable Kabir, please see the Chief Whip. Approach the Chief Whip. The Chief Whip and the Minority Leader. See them both. Honorable Mika. Honorable Sekiara. Honorable Sheubara. Honorable Nkuruka.
Georgia. I represent the good people of Iskwatu Munoj Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, I'm from Abia State. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, everyone on this floor have commended the President of Federal Republic of Nigeria for walking the talk on budget. And I join, you commended, and I join the minority leader in commending my president for leading the talk as far as budget implementation is concerned. I've been here for...
What's your point of order? 1 second.
I will play back your...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Mr. Speaker, my name remains Honorable Ndodi Godwin Elmelu, and I represent the good people of Anyocho Shimilifera constituency. I'm from Delta State. My point of order is on privilege. Mr. Speaker, when I made my submission, I did say that this House has mandated the standing committees by resolution that they should go and investigate the performance of the budget and come back to us to ascertain which of the agencies that have failed in living up to their expectation by implementing the budget, even as the funds had been released to them. There was no time in my submission. I categorically said that I was commending Mr. President. I made a clear-cut submission. But my colleague from Abia State, who coincidentally is also is deputy whip, but is fond of defeating men, so he's now seen as a man in Abia politics, now said that I said so. Why I'm making this very clear? My people are watching me, and they never gave me such mandate, and I will not want for my name to be misquoted to have said what I didn't say. That is in my point of order.
What mandate did they give you?
My mandate is to represent my constituency, their interest, and as we speak, most of the projects in the
Leader.
Your point of so you are correcting the deputy whip for misquoting you. Okay.
Mr. Speaker.
It's one thing to tell your people or to hear for your people to hear what you want them to hear, but you and I both know that you commend the president. Okay.
Mr. Speaker, sir.
Yes.
I would like to crave your indulgence to ask the leader whether his people gave him mandate to dress the way he's dressing, with that kind of cap and with that kind of...
Very good question. You are pan-Nigerian. You are for everybody. Okay, no problem. So,
Nationalist. He
So-
should be so.
you are saying somebody that has 4 wives and 27 children is not a
In
nationalist.
fact, what he's doing now, yes, and none of the wives are from either southwest or southeast.
Well, he has not finished yet. Be patient. Honorable Kiru.
I move on to commend Mr. President because I've been here for more than 12 years. And on this floor, okay, on this particular floor, everybody will wake up, we stand up on budget implementation, during budget presentation from the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and we'll be asking, how are you bringing budget when you have not implemented up to 43% here, sometimes 50%,
30%. It's gone as
sometimes
low as
30%, to be honest. And it is in this country now that we are seeing that at least budgets are being implemented 100%. And I'm sure that my brother Toby Okechukwu alluded to it. I don't know whether he's denying that. I do not care what the value is, but the truth of the matter is that you put a budget, like for instance, construction of road, for maybe 100 and something million, and then at the end of the day, the budget, the project will be awarded, and by October, it would be funded 100%, and so implemented 100%.
Unlike before.
Unlike before. Apart from the security challenges we have today, this government will be remembered for budget implementation and releases. My constituents will attest that the roads I included in budget in 2007, 2008, 2011, 2015 was only implemented by 9th Assembly and by the President of Federal Republic of Nigeria. Do I talk about bills that I sponsored when I came in here? It was assented by the President in 2017. And so what are we talking about? If you say you don't commend President, sorry, I'm commending President, and I know majority of the House members are commending Mr. President. And having said that, I also commend Mr. President because for the first time, and I'll quote paragraph 37 of what he presented here on the floor, he said, and I quote, the 2022 budget is also the first in our history where MDS were clearly advised on gender-responsive budgeting. These are part of critical steps in our efforts to distribute resources fairly and reach vulnerable groups of our society, unquote. Tell me, how else do somebody mean well or want to walk the talk? There's no other way. And so on this note, I'm advising the MDS that the president has said it, and president's speech is like law. It should have force of law. That during the
Go ahead.
during you don't have there's no
Go ahead.
point of order.
Go ahead.
Because so that when they come, I say it's like, and I'm a lawyer, I say it's
Like.
It's like. I did not say it's like.
It's akin.
So when
akin.
president says something, you take it serious. So I'm asking the people from this aisle, Exactly. So I'm asking the people from this aisle that I know that they are joining towards this side.
Honorable Elubelu, what
If
Honorable
you
Ekiri is telling you,
say-
there's something called the power of the bully pulpit.
Exactly.
So when you speak as the president, words matter, words count. The power of the bully pulpit, that's what she's referring to. Go ahead.
So, I do not want to tell
What
you
order is that, Honorable Toby? What order?
overrule if there's no point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable colleagues. My name is Toby Okechukwu. I represent an area of Gojiva.
We all know you. You're still looking for the point of order.
No, it's order 9.
You are trying to waste time looking for
Order
the
9, sub 5.1.
page.
Page 53.
Mr. Speaker, it's not reading from our current rule book. That is not the current rule book.
And
Relevance in debate.
yes, can I read it? It says debate upon any motion, bill, or amendment shall be relevant to such motion.
Yeah.
Bill or amendment except in the case of substantive motion for the adjournment of the House. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, the deputy whip of the House stood up and started adumbrating on what amounted to state capture, where he said that President Wells approximates law. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, first and foremost, this is not relevant to appropriation bill.
Chairman, leader, when she made that reference about the president's words,
yes,
what was she specifically talking about? What words, what issue was she speaking to? Was she speaking to what the president said in paragraph 37, which she quoted verbatim? Was she?
It does
Was
not
she
in
speaking
in-
to that?
In whatever manner
Gender
or what she
allocation, gender
in
neutral
what-
allocation.
in
That's what she
whatever
was speaking to,
manner
and
or
she's relevant. You are ruled out of order.
He cannot approximate
Go
law.
ahead.
Kano caucus, please. Kano caucus, please.
Mr. Speaker, I urge that the ministry, department, and agencies
Yeah, Honorable Toby is trying to bully you, maybe based on gender. I will protect you. I will protect you till you finish your. He's trying to bully you. Don't worry.
I know he's a bully. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I wish to urge the MDS to look at the promise that the president made to Nigerians. And so during the budget consideration with the parliament, they should make sure that they include responsive gender budgeting in this. And on this note, I urge my honorable colleagues to continue to commend the president for walking the talk, for making sure that budget implementation is carried 100%. And also urge the MDAs that when we pass this budget, they shouldn't wait till month of March. They should start the implementation from January. And of course, the procurement processes should also be reviewed to make sure that they don't waste people's time, because most times it's not about the fund release, it's about the procurement processes that take too much time. And I believe that we know that this is a deficit budget, and what it calls for is that people should be disciplined in spending. They should be disciplined in implementation. They shouldn't do anything outside the appropriation, like diversion of funds or transferring budget funds from one particular project to the other. So, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I thank you for this time, and I urge us happy deliberation. And the minority leadership should listen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Honorable members at the back, please. You either get seated or you go out.
Honorable
You either
Ibrahim.
resume your seat. Chairman works. I
Umar.
think I can see chairman works.
Honorable Ibrahim Umar, are you here? No. Honorable Francis Wave. Honorable
Will Bichi take your seat?
Idris Zakaria.
Yeah, it's working. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. I remain Honorable Ibrahim Umar Fortescue, representing the good people of Nigeria, Fortescue Federal Constituency, Yobe State. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I want to discuss or give my contribution on 3 key areas of the budget. First of all, the $57 per barrel should be jacked up to $59 per barrel. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, those key areas are defense and security, as well as 75 billion naira earmarked for empowerment to youth. Thirdly, Mambila hydroelectricity project. So these are the 3 areas I want to discuss on. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, taking into consideration the armed banditry in the country, insurgency, as well as kidnapping, therefore, the defense and security budget, what is budgeted is grossly inadequate, considering the intensity of these menace all over the nation. So therefore, what should be realized from the 57 naira jack up to $59 should be applied to defense and security. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the 75 billion naira budgeted for youth is also grossly inadequate. Should be increased to 200 billion naira. If you look at the rate of unemployment in this country, over 40% of unemployment rate. And if you look at it, the youth are the backbone of this country. So therefore, we should do everything possible to look at this 75 billion naira being earmarked. Is grossly inadequate. It should be increased to 200 billion naira. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the Mambila Plateau hydroelectricity project has been on the drawing board for the past 50 years. So therefore, it is only this time that Mr. President graciously budgeted 200 billion naira to that project, which is also grossly inadequate, considering the importance of that very project. So therefore, these are the 3 key areas that
Honorable Pottscombe, your time is off.
To look at it critically and then do justice to them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Pottiscombe. Well presented. Thank you very much. Honorable Kani Abubakar Fago. Abdul Karim Usman. Honorable Maki, where are you going? Where are you going? Huh? Okay, Honorable Maki, please contribute to the debate. No, I'm going outside the list. I want him to be part of this. He was going somewhere. He has an important meeting, but yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, my honorable colleagues. I'm Abubakar Maki Eleman. I'm from Jigawa State. I represent Madamudori Kaugama Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, today we start debate on 2022 budget proposal, tagged as Budget of Economic Growth and Sustainability. Does the proposed estimate make the potential to simulate economic growth? Does it include ingredients for development of economic and sustainability? My answer, Mr. Speaker, my honorable colleagues, is yes. If we are able to put the MDS on their toes to endure implementation of the budget, we can only make meaningful impact on the national economy and on the lives of the people if critically ongoing infrastructure projects such as those in railway, roads, agriculture, power, health, and education sector are brought to logical conclusion. I also believe that with the increased commitment to national defense and internal security, we will be able to create the right atmosphere for incentives and in the process improve the economy. Mr. Speaker, my honorable colleagues, however, my major concern is funding. With a projected oil revenue of 3.16 trillion and non-oil revenue of 2.13 trillion, there is room for improvement. We need to improve the non-oil revenue generation. Government-owned profit-making enterprises need to block leakages in the system so that more funds are realized for utilization in the implementation of the budget. The oil sector should also be optimized for improved revenue so that we can reduce our deficit and borrowing. Mr. Speaker, my honorable colleagues, when we look at the capital expenditure of 3.35 trillion naira and the debt service of 3.61 trillion naira, we should not forget that most of the debt service is actually capital expenditure in disguise, and the monies were borrowed to finance the capital expenditure. Mr. Speaker, bearing in mind that the 2022 budget will be the last year budget that will be implemented by this current administration, the National Assembly has to be on their feet. It is imperative on us to ensure that we carry out our statutory oversight to ensure full implementation of the budget so that ongoing projects in the critical sectors of our economy can be completed by the end of the budget year. Mr. Speaker, my honorable colleagues, I so submit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very well done. You weren't even prepared to speak today, and your submissions were very on point. Thank you. Honorable Mansour. You can go for that meeting now, Honorable Maki, that meeting that they've been calling you. Honorable Ude, we're going by the list, though. You are here, you are down there somewhere. But I will get to you, don't worry, as fast as I can.
Honorable Speaker, honorable colleagues.
I'll try and jump the queue.
Representative Manusoro Mansour is my name. That is the Benjua Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, I'm from Bauchi State. I rise this afternoon to lend my voice on the ongoing debate on the 2022 appropriation bill submitted by Mr. President. Mr. Speaker, I want to begin by congratulating the 9th National Assembly for returning the nation to January to December budget cycle. It is a record that the nation has failed 18 times to achieve this feat. Mr. Speaker, this wouldn't have been possible without the commitment of both the legislature and the executive arms of the government. Number two, Mr. Speaker, I want to reiterate a call I made during the 2021 budget debate in this hallowed chamber on the need for the government to deepen citizen participation in the budgeting process. World over, democratic governments are meant for the people. There is the need for us to encourage Nigerians to take ownership of the budgeting process in this country, from the point of formulation of the budget, to the appropriation at the National Assembly, to implementation, which is adjudged to be the most critical stage of public budgeting system, and to the evaluation stage. There is the need for us to deepen citizen participation so that we can have feedback from Nigerians, because the budget is meant for them. And in doing so, we can make the federal constituencies, the 360 federal constituencies that we have, as units of input for Nigerians to make their observations and their voice heard. Mr. Speaker, after scrutinizing the 2021 appropriation bill, I must say that the debt service put at 3.61 trillion for the year 2022 is troubling. The debt to GDP ratio gauge is faulty, and there is the need for the Nigerian government to consider replacing this ratio with debt to revenue, which is a better realistic gauge to debt sustainability. Mr. Speaker, if the federal government can do that, we are going to have a debt tracking sustainability, and it will be good for the Nigerian nation. There is also the need for the federal government to consider moderating the level of the borrowing by exploring innovative financing mechanisms, such as the securitization of the future revenues from government assets, including air, seafort, roads, and rail capital projects. And also to consider diaspora bond issuance for specific capital projects. This will have a long way in moderating the level of borrowing that the government is undertaking. Mr. Speaker, there is also the need for us as a nation to embark on domestic revenue mobilization. As at June 2020, the debt to revenue ratio in Nigeria were put at 934%, exceeding the threshold put internationally of 250%. Mr. Speaker, I believe this can be remedied by embarking on aggressive domestic revenue mobilization, and particularly relating to the component of the independent revenue of the budget. We have agencies that are revenue generating agencies, and I see no reason, Mr. Speaker, why the Honorable Minister of Finance and the Accountant General of the Federation should not consider enforcing or fine-tuning the Treasury single account for these revenue-generating MDAs, for these revenues to be moved into. And at the end of the month, or at the end of every quarter, undertaking of reconciliations can be conducted so that in line with the
Continue, round up. Who turned off his mic?
Mr. Speaker, there is the need for the...
Just round up. That's what the whip is trying to draw your attention.
I'm trying to round up. There is the need for the government to consider enforcing or fine-tuning the TSA so that all these independent revenues can go into the special government accounts. And at the end of every month, reconciliation can be undertaken. This, I believe, can broaden the revenue base of the federal government and can help in reducing the deficit gaps that we have in the budget. Thank you. I so submit.
Thank you, Honorable Mansour. Honorable Danjuma Shide. Honorable Sam Onwago. Abbas Adegun. Honorable Olajide Jimo. There are people before you. Yeah.
I represent Lagos Mainland Federal Constituency, Lagos State. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy, I'm glad that I'm one of the people here who have participated actively to pass PIB that has translated to PIA today. Glory be to God. I want to commend Mr. Speaker and the entire House, and also the administration of this present government, for them to like keeping the faith and ensure that the issue of appropriation and budget has been fully implemented in the last 2-3 years. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, budget is an assumption, stroke realities, whether correctly or incorrectly. There could be an error of omission, there could be an error of commission. Whichever way it is, there are disadvantages and advantages. The principle of merit of any budget, of any country or of any establishment. Mr. Speaker, for this 16.39 budget to be realized and be utilized appropriately, there are so many number of things that should be done. And we have to know that there are challenges and problems. Out of these challenges are natural challenges, natural problems, or man-made problems. We have to be very careful in doing this. One, insecurity is very important. This has to be addressed. And I commend the present government that among those things that they have voted, the larger chunk of this budget has been put in place on security, internal security of Nigeria. If that changed for better, I think we make more than what we have been expecting. Another thing again, Mr. Speaker, I commend this present government. In the last 3, 4, 6 years, there have not been any owing of salaries. When you are talking of personnel emolument of any of this the administration, people have been collecting their salary promptly, unlike before, which has not been possible. Now we should continue doing that and build more on it to avoid labor crisis. Labor crisis can lead to problems, can lead to protest, and it can affect any revenue that has to come in as part of generation. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have to build our capacity, both in and out, so that we can improve much more on the budgetary provision. COVID-19 is still alive. We have to ensure we put responsible position in place to address this issue, so that we shall not be part of those people in which their country has been put on red alert. Mr. Speaker, the CSO protest, civil society organization, we must ensure we engage them and let them be part and parcel of this government in order to avert any protest can hinder our progress. Budget 2022, I think, is going to be a more prosperous budget with action and purposeful. There are differences between successes and values. Value is very important. Let us build on our value so that our success can be increased before the head of this administration. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to say there's need for us to increase in our production capacity, particularly on domestic, to prepare for export, so that we'll be able to gain more foreign exchange back to Nigeria and improve our economic system. On this note, I think Mr. Chief Whip has signaled, and I want to obey the law. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable J.J. Jimo. Your points are well taken as it relates to the budget. I'm going to jump the queue. I have to respect our elders here. Honorable Woodil. Oh, Honorable Woodil, sorry. Honorable Fakaya is there before you. Honorable Fakaya.
I represent the people of Ifedayo, Oduadro, and the Federal Constituency of Osun State. And I'd like to make a contribution, short, straight, like an arrow, to my points. Number one, why I salute the Honorable Speaker and the Honorable colleagues here seated, and even the Senate, for complying with the request by the executive that will reset the button to a January-December cycle for budget making. I think it's fair to expect that if we did that, which we have done, then there should be a more properly timed implementation of the budget. I know it's easy to talk, it's more difficult to implement. But I'd like to see the executive, if they're going to borrow to implement the project for a year, they should be borrowing January, February, March, not borrowing or trying to arrange the borrowing in the third or fourth quarter of the year for which you want to implement. That is one point I want to make, because I'm aware right now, and it's been said here, maybe only 2 quarterly releases have been made. And now we're in the last quarter of the year. That's making a joke of all the effort that we put in, day out, to ensure that the budget is passed in time. And I pay attention to revenue shortfall for the government. And I begin to ask myself, and I recall when I was young, everybody paid tax pretty much. Whether you were a farmer, your daddy was a carpenter, whatever he did for a living, he paid tax. Now, we have tended to forgive everybody their taxation, except those who have an income where the tax is taken out of your income and the rest is paid to you. I think our tax reforms should be such that every Nigerian has a chance to contribute. Go out there and talk to 80%, maybe 89, 90% of the people of Nigeria. A lot of them that are self-employed, they don't pay tax anymore. So when we hear FRS or the state tax organizations or even the joint tax board discuss widening the tax net, why do they shy away from finding a way to make people pay, whether you're a carpenter, you are a taxi driver, you are selling rice in the market? These people make a lot of money, but they don't get to pay nothing. So I think that's an area I would like to see revenue boosted. Now, the country of Nigeria is gifted by the Lord with a lot of natural resources, notably oil and gas. But the same country now is going through a transition that, if we're not careful, might be too difficult to handle in the next 5 to 10 years. What am I saying? The world out there that used to buy oil and gas, they are transiting to the use of energy, renewable energy for their cars and even for household heating or air conditioning. Which means what? Even if we had all this oil gushing out of the sand of the ground, the demand may go down. Why is it that today, for ages now, our refineries are still dog-eared? They are not functioning. We are flaring gas and then importing gas. In this year, the cost of gas to the householder has more than doubled. For a company and for a country that says they want to deepen the use of LPG gas for cooking, people are now going back to the charcoal and going to the desert to do what we didn't want them to do, desertification. I'd like to see a situation where my government, of which I am a part, will do something about that so that we can take a proactive step towards ensuring that this time next year, either the refineries are working, or we have new ones, or somehow we are not importing LPG any longer. Thank you for your time, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Fake. Honorable Udil.
Muhammad Ali Udil. I represent Udil Garko Federal Constituency, Mr. Speaker. I'm from Kano State. Mr. Speaker, I'm eager to speak on this budget, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I'll join my colleagues in commending the President. Mr. Speaker, you could recall, before the coming of this President, there are so many budgets which we passed. And it's imperative then that some state governments cannot pay salary, Mr. Speaker, for 9 months, 15 months, 17 months. But Mr. Speaker, now, I doubt much if civil servants did not receive their salary almost anywhere. Mr. Speaker, if you come to the budget, Mr. Speaker, I would like to observe that we are allocating money on road construction. Mr. Speaker, maintenance is equally important, and even the road. Mr. Speaker, let's borrow from Zambia. Zambia, Mr. Speaker, each year, they budgeted $1 billion, and they must ensure that $1 billion is spent on the road to the latter, Mr. Speaker. So I think we need to borrow that our roads should be funded on a definitive amount to be allocated to our roads, Mr. Speaker, so that because there are a lot of hue and cries in terms of our roads, Mr. Speaker, you could recall that just about 2 or 3 weeks, tanker drivers or drivers blocked a road in Niger State for over 2 weeks, Mr. Speaker, because of bad roads. And you know, Mr. Speaker, our roads are terribly bad. Funding is critical, Mr. Speaker. We have to start allocating money on our roads that can be implemented. And you know, sometimes, Mr. Speaker, road construction has time. In rainy season, you may not do much on roads. But sometimes you see releases are done even during the rainy season that contractors may not do much. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm just talking on this so that if money is allocated for road construction, also maintenance is still critical, so that FEMA can get more allocation in terms of maintenance of our road, Mr. Speaker. The second issue, Mr. Speaker, this government is passionate about improving the lives of a common man, that is the poorest of the poor. Mr. Speaker, that's why we have the social investment programs, we have the GIM, the conditional cash transfer. Mr. Speaker, if that project, if that program we need, if this National Assembly need to look at the implementation of those programs, because it's one of the key cartel principles or one of the programs, one of the best programs of this government. But the implementation, Mr. Speaker, we need to look at it. We need to look how that money is expended in terms of implementation, Mr. Speaker, because we have a critical role. And the last item I want to speak is, Mr. Speaker, we are borrowing. But, Mr. Speaker, like I saw one clip, one of our members is saying that there are a lot of looted funds lying somewhere. Mr. Speaker, we have a committee on looted funds. But, Mr. Speaker, we need to look at those areas. I'm a member of that committee, which we have seen so many infractions. The House entirely, not only the committee, should sit down and look at all those looted funds so as to ensure that those looted funds are brought back and be added to the budget so that we can reduce our deficit. Mr. Speaker, since I'm not advocating for time, I respect the time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Wodale. Honorable Abubakar Bichi.
member representing Beach Ferry constituency. Mr. Speaker, I'm from Kano State. Mr. Speaker, I rise to commend the President for presentation of 2022 budget. The presentation was well presented. The President highlighted some key sectors, such as defense, national security, education, and infrastructures. But Mr. Speaker, I observed something under the Ministry of Works. The allocation in Ministry of Works is inadequate, actually. We realized only 280 billion naira allocated in 2022 budget. And currently we have about 640 billion naira certificates owing contractors. So if we apply 280 billion against 640 billion naira for our outstanding certificate, that means in 2022, there's nothing we can see in any road infrastructure such as bridges and construction of roads. Of course, the President has done very well in terms of initiative of SCOOC, NSIA, HDMI, he has done very well. But honestly, we need more funding. At least we need additional of 500 billion naira in order to see some massive development in our road infrastructures. These are my observations. I hope the Honorable House will consider our observation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Gucci. Honorable Ruru. Honorable Ahmed Munir Lere.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. My names are Engineer Ahmed Munir. I represent the good people of Lere Federal Constituency. My contribution to this particular discussion, sir.
Member from Lere is on the floor.
My contribution, sir, is I can see the general theme of lack of enough funds for certain areas or sectors of the economy. But the truth of the matter is we do have a lot of funds hanging, and we need to be a little bit creative in upgrading our revenue in the country as a whole. Number one, we can look at the oil sector. Recently in reports, about 77 oil companies are owing billions of dollars to the country at the moment. This is a loophole that we need to seriously look at. Other than that, we also have a lot of, let's say, resources that we're wasting, such as gas that we're flaring. If we were able to contain these gases and also include these revenues into our economy, it will go a long way. If currently there are no systems in place, before we do that, hopefully over the next decade, to ensure that there are no more gas flaring, if not for the economy, for the environment as well. But there are also penalties that are currently, quote unquote, supposed to be in place that are also not being effected for these gas flaring that are going on. And yes, we do have an internal revenue service, but probably it is now time to start debating an externally revenue service here in Nigeria for all those tax havens that our fellow citizens are storing their monies in, and we don't have access to tax them appropriately. So myself, we just received the budget today. There are things, if you realize I was remaining a little bit silent and studying it, as of now, at least I've gone through probably a quarter of it, just sitting here in the hall. We received this morning. My eyes are already teary and weary and strained of not able to see much in Lere Federal Constituency, if next to nothing. And this goes to show that adequate representation is extremely important. You know how I came into the assembly about a month ago and the issues we had related to Lere Federal Constituency. Adequate representation truly matters, but I'm just joyous to say, sir, with your kind encouragement and the encouragement of my colleagues, it seems that it is not too late to salvage the situation, and I will work arduously and fervently, and that's a promise that I make to my constituents, that I will not fail you in 2022. Thank you.
Yeah, I have no doubt that the people of Lere will benefit immensely from your presence in the House. We'll move on to Honorable Mani Ashiru. Is he here? No. Honorable Shatima Ali. The last speaker on this list, we will wait till tomorrow to take him, and that's Honorable Babao. Honorable Babao is not here. Honorable Michelle, maybe you are listed for tomorrow. No, that list just came. That list just came now. This is the list I have typed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Michelle, tomorrow.
Honorable colleagues.
Make sure you type out the list for tomorrow, and Honorable Michela's name is supposed to be there as well.
Amejaha Babawa is my name. Chibok Dambuwa Goza Federal Constituency is where I represent. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I have the privilege of listening to some commentators immediately after presidential presentation of appropriation bill. Most Nigerians have the impression that the budget is outrageous, is over-ambitious, is the highest figure recorded in the history of the country, but without taking into cognizance the following things or issues. One, the exchange rate. This shows that had it been the price of $1 is less than 300 naira, as recorded in the past, this budget content is going to be less than 10 trillion naira. Another thing, there is a standard measure or a used to measure whether a budget is too much or too little, where expenditure is too much or too little. That is public expenditure to GDP ratio. Public expenditure to GDP ratio in Nigeria is still within the ratio of 12%, which is the least in Africa. The average in Africa is 22%. But today we are recording 12% ratio. That is public expenditure to GDP ratio. Another thing, I want to emphasize on the issue of debt, collecting loans from one angle to the other. In as much as the loan can be used for the purpose intended, particularly in area of security, infrastructural development, and other relevant areas to attract both domestic and foreign direct investment, there is nothing wrong with that country that is not indebted all over the world. United States of America inclusive. So if America can have the highest number of debt globally, there is nothing wrong if Nigeria can borrow to service budget deficit, particularly if the loan can be used for the purpose intended. Thirdly, with regard particularly on our roads and other related infrastructure, Mr. Speaker, the budget, you realize that a road that was awarded no, I only use 1 minute. I'm the time conscious.
Chief Whip is warning you.
Okay, sir. A road that was awarded at the cost of 30 billion naira, only 300 or 500 million naira is allocated. It's like you are telling the contractor to go and spend the money. So there will be no impact. As rightly suggested by other commentators, let it be mopped up together and put in a strategic road in every geographical location of this country in order to have result. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I want to comment on the implementation or funding the execution. But it's one thing to fund budget 100%, is another thing to have impact of 100%. As legislators, the president is encouraged in this 9th assembly because of the cooperation and solidarity he had from National Assembly. He was encouraged to present a budget at least 3 months preceding the time of December. within our limit to make sure that we pass it from January to December. This is exactly what encourages the prayer. But the problem where we have problem now is the implementation. Can be released to an MDA, but it's another thing for them to implement 100% before the end of December. Mr. Speaker, we should increase our level of oversight function as legislators for posterity to judge us kindly. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Honorable Baba. The last point you made is very critical, and it was made earlier, I think it was by the minority leader, in terms of the difference between budget releases and implementation. And we need to look critically at the MDAs, and that's going to be very, very important. And we need to use this budget and to measure them against whether they've been able to perform in the last budget or not. Thank you very much. Honorable Michelle, I see he's still here. Okay. So we'll wait till tomorrow. What's your point about that?
Don't worry, you are safe. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I remain honorable to the Godwin Elmelu, and I represent the good people of Anyocho.
Honorable Michelle is back. Go ahead, Honorable Elmelu. Okay.
I represent the good people of Anyocho Shibulifera constituency. Can I, for the respect that I have for the old man, can I just step down my point of order? Allow him to finish, then I will raise it.
Okay. Honorable Michelle, quickly, 2 minutes. You were listed for tomorrow, but you've been here all day, so 2 minutes, please.
Then the good people of Askra Obahol Federal Constituency of Borno State. Mr. Speaker, I want to add my voice and commend Mr. President and our relevant committees that put these proposals together. Mr. Speaker, what is catching about this budget is the title. It said sustainable development. Now, when you talk about the word sustainable, you mean in the planning, all the boxes have been ticked. But Mr. Speaker, we are all still aware of what happened last year when we had the pandemic, and we discovered that the health system was very, very, very weak. I thought we would have learned our lessons, Mr. Speaker. When you look at the budget just before us, you discover that health has only 2.7%. 2.7%, I repeat. Now, some 15 years ago, there was a budget declaration which recommended that for us to have a proper health sector, we should give at least 15% to the health sector. Mr. Speaker, I feel since this is a proposal, something can still be done by this House to improve the funding of the health sector so that things like research and development, as aptly captured in this budget, that this is a budget of development. We manufacture nothing in this country. Our research institutions are down in the health sector. And if another pandemic, God forbidden, should happen again, we will be in the same shoes. So something needs to be done. Let's give the health sector at least 10%. 2.7% is too low. A common saying, Mr. Speaker, also is that if you want to destroy a country, spoil the education system in that country. Look at this budget. Education has only 3.6%. And if we are to improve the education, we need to improve the educational funding. Something can still be done by this honorable House. 3.6% for education of this whole country is too weak. I want to also add my voice to the observations made by the Deputy. Chief Whip has already warned me, he's my leader, so I want to accept that and round up that, Mr. Speaker, on the whole, for it to be sustainable, the health sector and the education sector must be well taken care of. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Michelle. Honorable, okay, go ahead, Honorable, your point of order, Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I remain Honorable Ndudi Godwin Delmelu, and I represent the good people of Anyocho Shimilifera constituency. I'm from Delta State. Mr. Speaker, my point of order is on Order 1, Order 8, Rule 1, 4, and 7. Mr. Speaker, if you check Order 8, Rule 1, it talks about the highlight of how to arrangement of business. Mr. Speaker, because you had earlier submitted that the time we have will not be sufficient to take any matter of urgent national importance, and for that we moved straight to the general principles of the budget. Unfortunately, all the members listed to contribute to this very all-important debate are out for other oversight functions. As a result, they are not here to take their slots. Given that, Mr. Speaker, and also given that very soon we're going to be committing this bill to standing committees for them to do their job effective from tomorrow, I want to plead, because this also has to do with what they're going to do when we commit it to them, that you allow this House, graciously allow me, it's just a few lines, I will read the top title and this resolution to be taken by the House so that we can take it and afford this agency the opportunity for them to be attended to during this 2022 budget. This is my submission.
Okay, because tomorrow is, you are saying because tomorrow is our last day to debate the budget and you think this should form part of the budget, you want to take it now? Okay, well, you'll need to suspend this. So we're going back to the order of the day. You need to suspend the rules, but before then, let's quickly take Honorable Deere for the Deere. He said 1 minute, Honorable John Deere, and then we'll take Honorable Elumelu's motion.
Right Honorable Speaker, Honorable colleagues, Dr. John Deere is my name, Benue State, Boko Taka Federal Constituency. I want to lend my voice to just one area of this budget 2022. In the analysis of the Minister of Finance, she said the defense has taken the largest chunk of this budget, and that is quite commendable. Over 2 trillion naira, almost 3 trillion. What one wants to add is that if this administration can end insurgency, it will be a huge, huge, huge success. And that will be the take home for Nigerians going forward. So the budget of almost 3 trillion for the defense of this country, I think is something that is worth commending. The defense committees of the House, one wants to say that they should sit up to make sure, because we are sure the almost 3 trillion for the defense should be 100% cash backed, funded and cash backed. So if it is 100% cash backed and there is proper oversight by the House, indeed by the National Assembly, I am sure the issue of insurgency, the issue of kidnapping, terrorism and all that should, by the grace of God, put behind. So we want to urge the defense committees of the House, the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, all the defense committees to sit up and do their work going forward in 2022 so that this thing will be put behind and a big success, we will all be part of the success. Right Honorable Speaker, honorable colleagues, that's an area that I want to really speak to. Thank you for the opportunity, even though I'm listed for tomorrow.
Thank you, Honorable John. Honorable Elumelu, can you explain yourself again, and then so that we can either take your motion or...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, earlier on I had raised a point of order 8, Rule 1, 4, and 7. 1 talks about the arrangement of business. Then 4 is a matter of urgent national importance. Then 7 talks about suspension of our rules to enable us to address this. I was saying that what I'm about to raise borders on some infrastructural issues that relate to a Federal Medical Center, Asaba. And the resolution here is to ask Appropriation Committee to see how they can ensure that what they are asking for is provided in the 2022 budget. And given that by tomorrow, they will all resort into various committees for budget defense, and we will not have that opportunity to commit it to them. Hence why I'm pleading to all my colleagues to please allow me to just take it so that we can commit it to the committee.
Well, I don't know the language of the prayer, and I'm sure like we said, I addressed this during the budget presentation, during my address when Mr. President was here, that there's some resolutions that are critical that this House has passed, and that I hope it was captured in the budget, and that if it wasn't captured, we'll work with the executive and other arms to make sure we try and capture them. That is, yours falls under one of such. We can take it, but because you have particularized it to your place in Asaba, what happens to the rest of the other resolutions? That's number one. Number two, I don't want a resolution of this House not to be implemented or implementable. So if we now ask the Committee on Appropriations to make sure they capture it, straight jacketing them, because that means they will be disobeying the resolution of the House. So maybe you can take it, but the resolution or the prayer has to be not a mandate, but to urge the Appropriations Committee to try and see if they can be accommodated. So you are just basically not mandated, just urge them alongside other critical resolutions of the House. So I think, yeah, go ahead.
Once again, I remain Honorable Ndodi Godwin Elmelu, and I represent the good people of the Natural Shimilifera constituency. I'm from Delta State. The motion is the need to provide equipment for the Federal Medical Center Asaba Annex. And the resolution is to urge the House Committee on Appropriation, Finance, and Health to liaise with each other and see the possibility of them inputting the request in this motion in 2022 budget and other resolutions of the House that has to do with critical infrastructures as resolved by the House. I so move.
Okay. Okay, Honorable Bichi.
Honorable Abokar Bichi. I rise to score the motion heavily moved by Minority Leader. Speaker, I so moved. I so second.
Thank you very much, Honorable Bichi. Those in support, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. Ayes have it. Some time ago, we moved a motion on the massacre that occurred in Sokoto State, and part of the resolution was to send a strong delegation to commiserate with the people of Sokoto and do an on-ground assessment. The delegation will be led by the leader of the House. We have Minority Leader, Honorable Jega, Honorable Fulata, Honorable Benson, Honorable Ben Kalu, Honorable Kumo, and Honorable Lego. Again, the delegation to Sokoto will be led by the House Leader, and the delegation will be the Minority Leader. So in case the House Leader disappears again, the Minority Leader will take over Honorable Jaga, Honorable Fulata, Honorable Jimmy Benson, Honorable Ben Kalu, Honorable Kumo, Honorable Lego, and the 3 or 4 members from the affected areas. I believe Honorable Bagada, Honorable Salames, Serikiada, and Honorable Kakali will also join the delegation or receive the delegation, whichever way is going to work.
Mr. Speaker, I will lead only to the extent of the Sokoto airport. Then from there, my leadership will terminate and he takes over. For partisan reasons.
Well, when it comes to security of lives and where our citizens are affected, I think we should shelve all partisan considerations. Do we adjourn or DS? Do you? Adjourn. Okay. Honorable Kakale.
Please, Honorable Shodobolaro Kakali, member representing Boding Gadangishun Traitor. I'm from Subkoto Brunishu. I just rise, Mr. Speaker, to really thank you enormously and the House for setting up this committee to visit our people in Sokoto State, particularly with the ravaging insecurity that is not only affecting our state and the concern of this very important chamber to the good and welfare of the people of Nigeria and Sokoto State. We really appreciate, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome, Honorable Kakale. The leader of the House, can you please move for adjournment? The debate on the appropriation on the budget continues tomorrow. We will go also strictly by our list. So let's try and get here as early as possible.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Honorable members, I thank each and every one of us that we have stayed to this extent discussing or debating the general principles of the Appropriation Bill 2022. Mr. Speaker, on this note, I would like to move as directed that this House be adjourned till tomorrow, Thursday, by 11 a.m. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I so move. Thank you.
Absent the principal officers. I think there are about 30 members present on the floor. Please submit your names to the Chief Whip. Absent the principal officers. Members present, please submit your names to the Chief Whip. Honorable Victor Nwokolo, can you second? And please also take Honorable Victor, Chief Whip. Please also take Honorable Victor Nwokolo's name out of the list because he strolled in just about 15 minutes ago. Honorable Chief Whip. Chief Whip, please remove Honorable Nwokolo's name from the list. He just came in about 15 minutes ago. Honorable Nwokolo, you may second the adjournment till tomorrow, since you are coming.
Noise. Honorable Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, my name is Honorable Victor Nwokolo, member representing Ika Northeast, Ika South Federal Constituency. I do rise to support the motion leader of the House, and so second.
Those in support, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. The ayes have it. Honorable Kiro, you can stay behind. House is adjourned till tomorrow, 11 a.m.